We were just talking with Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose about some of what Tucker Carlson had to say in his interview on Russell Brand's podcast about January 6th and election integrity. And again, a key point from the conversation with LaRose, because there was a lot there, key point is what Vote Ref, one of the organizations that he worked with, and what his transparency project, the Data Act that's being implemented in Ohio, seeks to do. Most common discrepancies occur when comparing the number of ballots cast versus the number of registered voters who voted. Number of ballots cast versus the number of registered voters who voted. And that's part of what this transparency project seeks to correct, to inspire confidence because of improved accuracy in the administration of elections.
And they seem to clean the voter rolls pretty accurately and often compared to other states.
Do everything out in the open. These are our elections. That's essentially the attitude, and it's the proper one. Tucker Carlson also had this to say in his sit down with Brand about American politics, about Trump, and specifically Trump vis-a-vis Ukraine. This against the backdrop of us, now the U.S., providing cluster bombs to Ukraine, weapons that we have taken out of our arsenal at present. Interesting. Here's Tucker.
I mean, I made a huge mistake last November in getting involved in American politics, something I've never done before, and making calls, this guy's going to win. I think this is going to happen in this state. Meet your new governor in New York, stuff like that. And I was wrong on almost every call. I'm not a very astute political analyst. I'm not interested in politics. I never have been interested in politics. I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in people. And so there's a primary going on in the United States between Trump and a bunch of other people, primarily Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, but others, Vivek Ramaswamy, for example. And I haven't said word one about it. Don't plan to. I think looking back on this 10 years from now, assuming we're still around, I think we're going to see Trump's emergence as the most significant thing to happen in American politics in 100 years, because he reoriented the Republican Party against the wishes of Republican leaders. But when I think about Trump right now, so it's July of 2023, I'm struck by his foreign policy views. Trump is the only person with stature in the Republican Party, really, who's saying, wait a second, why are we supporting an endless war in Ukraine? And that, leaving aside whether Trump's going to get the nomination or get elected president or would be a good president, I can't even assess that. All I can say at this point is I'm so grateful that he has that position. He's right. And everyone in Washington's wrong. Everyone. And Trump is right on that question. And it's a big question. That war is reshaping the world. It's reshaping the economy of the world. It's reshaping populations. I was just in Romania last week, which is, of course, shares a border with Ukraine. The refugees in that region, the number of people killed in that war. Europe will never be the same because of this war. And it really matters. And Trump alone among popular figures in both parties understands that, and I'm grateful for it. Whether he gets the nomination or gets elected, words really matter.
Everyone in Washington, other than Trump, is wrong on Ukraine, says Tucker Carlson. Fay New York Times columnist Jonathan Capehart. Boy, it's interesting. Who are the chicken hawks now? Jonathan Capehart on this ghastly weekly program on state-funded media with David Brooks, where they talk about the issues of the day and agree vociferously with one another. David Brooks pretending to be a Republican, of course, playing the role. Jonathan Capehart had this to say about those cluster bombs that America doesn't use for humanitarian reasons.
Sending cluster munitions is, I think probably crosses a line for a lot of people. But when you are the Western Alliance and the big mantra is this is authoritarianism versus democracy, and democracy must win, well, democracy has to have all the tools possible to make it possible.
What's next? Nuclear war? Cluster bombs are banned in over 100 countries. for
give,
a reason, because they kill a mass number of civilians.
give Ukraine everything it wants. Why stop at
Why
cluster
do we
bombs? It's
draw the
democracy
line?
for authoritarianism. Well, yeah, is it though? What kind of democracy is it when you have a president? And I'm talking about Zelensky. These are legitimate questions to ask, by the way, and still uh, find Putin a detestable autocrat, which he is. Uh, when Zelensky silences media he doesn't like, puts a American guerrilla reporter, on the ground reporter, in prison, suspends elections. Those are the hallmarks of democracy. That's what this is.
Shuts down churches.
Shuts down churches.
Yep.
For more on all this, Dakota Woods served America for 2 decades in the Marine Corps, senior research fellow for defense programs at the Heritage Foundation. Dakota, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to ask an unfair question, so prepare. So, are you in Tucker Carlson camp or Jonathan Capehart's?
Well, I think you're drawing extremes there, and I'm not avoiding the question at all. I think Carlson is right and wrong in some areas. I mean, for him to say that he's not interested in politics is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
His entire career was, based on assessing politics, and calling the Ukraine war an endless war is just not a good characterization. You have a country that was invaded by another country. So what is Ukraine supposed to do? Just roll over and Russia wins, or does it fight back? I mean, those are the two options, that it has. So when we think about the Ukraine war, in the United States' interest, a U.S. first focus on this, is it in our interest to have a Russian win in Ukraine? And to Carlson's point, this war is reshaping Europe and much of the world. So is a Russian win in Ukraine and control of Ukraine and the Black Sea and all the downstream implications good or not good? And if it's good, then we can reorient everything in Europe and U.S. policy to accommodate Vladimir Putin's validation of the use of military force to change borders and to control Ukraine. And what does that world look like? If that win is not good, then what is the Western world, writ large, the U.S., going to try to do about it? Ukraine can't arm itself. We would want Europeans to be more aggressive in funding monetarily and providing equipment, but they are in an even worse condition than the United States is in terms of industrial capacity for military stuff, munitions inventories, and all. So they're doing some. They should do more, but they can't do more. And the U.S. can help out. So, I mean, these are the differences here. And you can't say that Trump would come in within 24 hours in the war. It ignores what Putin's master plan is and how important this thing is to him, just like Taiwan's importance to China.
Yeah, but what about
I think that's how we have to characterize it.
Sorry about that. What about us sending them giving them cluster bombs? Is that a line that we should not cross?
No, I'm in favor of that, and here's the reason: these are weapons of war. So there are 111 countries that signed on to an agreement not to produce, distribute, use these sorts of munitions. There's another 12 or so that haven't validated it through their legislatures. So 120 some odd countries say no. The countries that did not sign on to that are Egypt, Turkey, the United States, Poland, Russia, China, Brazil, and a few others. And if you notice, these are larger countries that have capable militaries and are really concerned about their ability to defend their borders and to export, military power to fight a war that doesn't get to their country. So the fact that Costa Rica or Namibia signs on is kind of irrelevant. The problem in the past has been the dud rate, unexploded ordnance, approaching 40 or 50%. So these would be used. War goes away someplace in Africa, and you got a farmer or some kids that go out into a field and stumble across these, and you got a lot of innocents hurt. The United States has reduced that dud rate to 2% or less. They're used very precisely. These would be artillery rounds going in on Russian military positions. So this is Ukraine fighting for its survival, requesting these munitions to be used on Ukrainian soil against an invading force. And to show the restraint that the U.S. has exercised, we have not given them weapons that would allow them to conduct attacks into Russia for fear of spreading this war. What
does that say about where the Ukrainian counteroffensive currently finds itself, that the cluster bombs are on their way?
Yeah, well, not good. And this is a consequence of timidity in the West, to include the U.S., and this minimal effort relative to the scale and scope of war. So they engage and they beat back the original Russian assault a year ago or more, and then this dribbling of munitions that arrived weeks or months after the request and in small, relatively small amounts relative to war, has enabled or given Russia time to strengthen and fortify its defenses. So all the debate about do you give them tanks or not, do you give them artillery or not, types of rockets and those sorts of things, all that delay allowed Russia to really fortify its positions in seized and held territory. Now you're trying to conduct an offensive against heavily fortified layered defenses, which is likely the most difficult military operation on record. And yet they still don't have American tanks. They still have a dribbling of support. So the delay over months created conditions where this much touted offensive is going to have minimal immediate success. So again, the Western support to Ukraine has created conditions that make success very difficult. So it goes back to the original question. Is a Russian win in the U.S. interest or not? If it's not, we really need to assist to change those circumstances. And if we're happy to deal with a Russian win in Europe, then that's going to be a different world.
Yeah, I can appreciate the strategic imperative of not allowing Russia to conquer Ukraine. What I can't appreciate is this false dichotomy that's being presented by these fey chicken hawks like Jonathan Capehart and others, including, the neocons, the Jonah Goldbergs of the world and so forth, who characterize Zelensky as some kind of modern-day George Washington. It's preposterous.
No.
Right. Your opinion on this presentation of democracy versus authoritarianism, that's the fight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, these are not, and say, well, they're not perfect. That would imply that they're pretty good. Ukraine has all kinds of problems, and it's going to be one of the main reasons why there's not going to be a rush at this summit in Vilnius, Lithuania, for NATO members tomorrow and Wednesday. There will not be a rush to try to get Ukraine membership in NATO anytime soon. They've got some profound foundational internal corruption problems, how they govern, the civil liberties that you were talking about and all. So those are all very real, and I agree with you on those sorts of things. So, accounting for that, we still have the problem of Ukraine versus Russia.
Yeah, I understand.
And what is Russia's ultimate position to be? And sometimes you've got to deal with, the mafia in Italy, just try to stop shipments, between the fascist Italian government in World War II supporting Nazi Germany. So sometimes you got to make these alliances.
Yeah, I mean, alliances of convenience, I understand. I just, when you're inundated with agitprop from your own government, that's when people get a little, at least like me, get a little testy. But I want to get to,
agree with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I want to get to China. Our friend Gordon Chang, a Chi-Com policy expert, had this to say recently about the infiltration of Chinese nationals in this country, and I wanted to get your reaction against the backdrop of the former host of the Captain Kangaroo Show, our Treasury Secretary, over there bowing before the Chinese communists.
Oh, that's horrible. Right.
Yeah, all right, hold on a second. Here's Gordon Chang.
First of all, China's in distress. So the Chinese people are trying to get out of their country. It's extreme pessimism and really a failure of society. But in that number, Jason, there are males of military age, unaccompanied by family members, pretending not to speak English, traveling in packs of between 5 and 15. And those almost certainly are saboteurs. They're being placed in the United States because on the first day of a war with Asia, I believe that they will commit acts of sabotage against us. And the Biden administration is not tracking these people. It's obvious what's going on. Even the Border Patrol has been able to find known links to the Chinese military with some of these people coming across. The Biden administration couldn't care less.
Your reaction, Dakota Wood?
I don't know about the saboteur part. It would not surprise me at all. I just don't literally know. But yes, young unaccompanied males of military age fleeing a country or leaving their country to come to the U.S. has always been a problem, whether it's Middle Eastern, Pakistani, Chinese, or what have you. That's why our border, our uncontrolled borders, is such a huge problem. Linkages to the Chinese Communist Party or Chinese military should not be a surprise. It's a system where everybody has to have some kind of linkage. Just like if you were in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, you were going to have a link to the Ba'ath Party just to survive, right? So it doesn't mean that it's good. I'm just saying that it's not surprising. I think more worrisome than these presumed saboteurs is the investment of China via the academic community and the business community into all of our laboratories, the most advanced scientific research that's being done in universities across our country, the openness of American businesses to do business in China where they have to partner with a Chinese business in order to do that. The Chinese partner then steals all the intellectual property and the Americans get the boot, right? And so it's this capitalist desire to make money, which is good, but sacrificing principles, ideals, and whose team you want to be on, right? Are you this globalist country or company, or are you a U.S.-based company that has the interest of the American people at heart? So I think that's a much more profound and widespread problem across our academic and business communities with this Chinese involvement than it is, little packs of guys running around. That might be the case. Gordon might be right on that. I don't know, but I think we've got larger, deeper problems that are going to take a lot more effort to solve.
He is Dakota Wood. He served in the Marine Corps for 2 decades. He's now a senior research fellow for defense programs at the Heritage Foundation. Dakota, thank you as always.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Want to remodel your kitchen or bathroom? There's only one name to remember: ForEverRemodeling.com. Not Core Ever Remodeling or Door Ever Remodeling or Explore Ever Remodeling. It's ForEverRemodeling.com. Need an addition or whole home remodeling? Don't call 1, 2, 3 Ever Remodeling. It's Forever Remodeling. Want to finish your basement but don't know where to turn? It won't help to think of Store Ever or Snore Ever or Score Ever Remodeling. You want Forever Remodeling. Forever Remodeling is your go-to for the highest quality kitchen, bathroom, whole home remodeling, room additions, and basement finishing. So don't go to Decor Ever Remodeling or Implore Ever Remodeling.